Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, and we're focusing on the search for MH370. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey.
You. And we're going to start off with the poll, and we've had an amazing response, and Richard's got some details on that.
Yes, huge response, and you obviously like having your say, so thank you very much. We've had over 500 comments yesterday, and the word poll is mentioned over 400 times, so a large number of respondents. The question was, will MH370 be found? And we asked you to say yes, neutral, or no. Many have said, but there is no time limit to the question. One commenter said, maybe not in my lifetime, but yes, it will be found at some point. We thought about adding a time frame to the question. We thought about, will MH370 be found ever, or will MH370 be found in the next 2 years, or some other time frame limit? But we purposely didn't say that because we knew you would add that in your answers, and many have, and we will evaluate the timeframes for those who say, yes, it will be found, but in the next 2 years, or not in my lifetime, or don't know how we evaluate not in your lifetime because we don't know how long you're going to live. But we will point out the different timeframes that people have chosen. There was also one clever individual who answered multiple times. His answer was poll, colon, yes, semicolon, yes, semicolon, yes, exclamation marks. So I'm sorry, Bob, but you will only get one vote in the poll.
And also, somebody asked us what our opinion was too.
Yeah, should we divulge that,
I
Jeffrey?
think we
What do you
should.
think? Okay.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's going to be found, and I think it'll be found within the next 12 months.
Okay, I think it's definitely going to be found, and I think in the next 2 years.
Okay, there we go. Now into the questions. And this is a big question. This is a big question. So bear with us, viewers. This is from Paul. Hello, I'm Paul. Thanks for the regular updates and for answering our questions. I'm not an aircraft accident investigator and don't pretend to be one. Allow me to explore an evidence-based likely scenario and explain my thought processes by making the following points. Point one. In the early stages, first couple of months of the investigation into the disappearance of MH370, there was a general understanding that flight MH370 diverted and it ended up somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. Point two, the person in command of the aircraft and responsible for the diversion was likely experienced, knowledgeable, and skillful to execute several turns, especially the 180-degree U-turn after it passed waypoint Agari and then flew in a western direction. Captain Sahari Ahmad Shah possessed all those qualities. Yes, he had all of them. He was a type-rated examiner and had several thousand of flight hours on the Boeing 777-300ER. True. The captain of MH370 had created a flight in his home simulator resembling the flight path of MH370 with two waypoints in the southern Indian Ocean set at fuel exhaustion, with the last waypoint coordinates to be known. Maybe the flight simulation was a routine training exercise, a coincidence, maybe not. Point four, Zahari deleted this flight from his computer, but the FBI recovered the data. This is certainly a disturbing and concerning fact to me. Point five, the British satellite company Inmarsat provided to the aircraft investigators, among others, the seven handshakes represented by the arcs between the plane and the satellite. The seventh arc and last handshake is of paramount importance. Given all the points mentioned above, if Ocean Infinity had asked a layman like me where to search first, I'd tell them the following: create a circle with a center at the coordinates of the last waypoint on Sahari's flight simulation with a radius of 50 nautical miles or more. And if it's in close proximity to the seventh arc, search this area thoroughly by crisscrossing it several times. Richard and Jeffrey, do you agree with my thought processes?
Wow,
Richard?
amazing question or set of questions, a set of points made. Um, there were six coordinates recovered from Captain Sahari Shah's home flight simulator. The last coordinate is 1,249 kilometers or 674 nautical miles from the seventh arc. So that clarifies one of your points, and it's not within 50 nautical miles or so. Um, we're showing a screenshot of these six coordinates from the home flight simulator. However, on the 25th of August 2016, that's 9 years ago almost now, Victor Iannello and I published a paper together titled Possible Flight Path of MH370 Towards McMurdo Station and Antarctica. Now, the reason for McMurdo Station in the Antarctic is we were just tracking those coordinates and followed them to any final waypoint that might be used. We're including a link to the paper we published back in 2016 below in the notes on today's episode. So what we did, we mapped that track as defined by those coordinates found on the home flight simulator. They're marked in black on the next screenshot that we're showing. We also reproduced the track in Microsoft Flight Simulator with the exact settings as explained in the paper in some detail, and that's marked in yellow on the following screenshot map. Now, the track in yellow crosses the seventh arc at 26.9 degrees south, 100.6 degrees east. The track in black crosses the seventh arc at 29.2 degrees south, 98.9 degrees east. The point where the original track defined by Captain Sahari Shah crosses the seventh arc at the 29.2 degrees south, 98.9 is only 56 nautical miles from the Whisper defined crash location, which is at 29.128 and 99.934. This point, the Whisper point, is 33 nautical miles further from the seventh arc because I believe the aircraft glided for around 33 nautical miles and up to a maximum of 48 nautical miles beyond the seventh arc. So that is a pure coincidence that Whisper turns out exactly at the point that you've been analyzing, Paul, in your long comment, and I have to say it, yeah, made us think back in 2016, which was before Whisper was even thought of as a means for detecting and tracking aircraft. I also mentioned yesterday an excellent paper by Victor Iannello and Yves Guillaume, who is an expert in Microsoft Flight Simulator, which was published on the 29th of November later in that year, 2016. And in my view, is a must read if you want to analyze the home flight simulation. And we're also including a link below to that paper. So thank you for the question. And I hope my long answer didn't bore too many people.
Okay, from Martina Killen, 9730. I've always wondered, when did the passenger and crew realize there was something wrong? or do you think they were all knocked out somehow before the plane crashed? Love your updates, Rich and Jeffrey. Martina in Ireland. Interesting question, that one.
Yeah. Martina, thank you for that. The answer is we don't know for sure exactly when the crew or the passengers would have worked it out that something was wrong. It was a moonless night, so there was no orientation by looking out the window. There's no moonlight to go by. There are, however, thousands of fishing boats, and at night, their lights appear like a field of stars on the surface of the sea. And that would certainly give you a form of orientation. You'd be able to detect if a turn, a diversion was being made. And the turn at diversion was, almost 180 degrees back towards Malaysia. So it is possible that passengers realized a turn was happening. And there may have been some announcement made to as a cover story of that turn. Um, we're having to return to Kuala Lumpur before technical reasons or something. Um, some experts say the turn was quite sharp and beyond the limit of the normal bank angle of a Boeing 777. Obviously, if it's a sharp turn, then passengers would detect that immediately at the turn. And some experts say that the cabin was depressurized and hypoxia resulted. It would take about 20 minutes, or sometimes less, depending on whether there was a change in altitude to a higher altitude, then hypoxia would result quicker. So we don't know to be sure whether hypoxia happened, and we do know that people would have worked out there was a turn, and we do know that the co-pilot attempted a phone call from his mobile phone. So um, we're not sure exactly when.
Okay. So Bravo Victor 3700, Canadian airline captain here. No, the mental health monitoring is not adequate. It equates to a questionnaire during our yearly medical. How are you feeling? Honestly, I'm not sure how you truly monitor mental health in pilots. We could mask our symptoms to keep our jobs. It's a very telling comment.
Indeed, it is, and I find it fascinating. I actually consulted three doctors and showed them the last medical report of Captain Sahari Shah from the clinic Medi Utama and dated the 3rd of December 2013. This was leaked in the Royal Malaysian Police report. His last medical reveals nothing negative. But the first page is self-assessment and check boxes to tick. And the second page looks like a very perfunctory tick box form filled out by the doctor. So head, neck, scalp, neurology, all tick normal. I asked a specialist doctor for neurological disorders and showed pictures of Captain Sahari Shah over the years, which, like me, I have a one-sided droop on the face, and he had the same. And this can be an issue with facial nerves, or it can be something more serious. So you need a brain scan in order to find that out. The doctor's opinion was the droop it was not a problem of facial nerves, but a possible brain disorder such as a TIA or a small tumor. But I point out that that was just looking at pictures and not having the opportunity of doing any brain scan or any further checks. So we don't know, is the bottom line. Mental health issues can be picked up by a doctor in a medical examination, but as our captain points out, when the patient says, "Oh, but I'm sleeping very well, I do not suffer anxiety attacks, I've never felt down or depressed, and I certainly never had any blackouts or whiteouts," then the doctor is not going to get any information directly from the patient. But a doctor can get information and clues by observing behavioral or physical cues. You can actually test, for example, the thyroid function with a blood test and find out whether there's a possible reason for mood changes of a thyroid misfunction. You can find out from a complete blood count whether anemia, infection, or a metabolic derangement. And you can also, if you suspect substance abuse, screen for substances, alcohol, drugs. So there is a lot that could be done, and I don't think it is being done. As I said yesterday, certainly not worldwide in a standardized manner.
Yeah. So from Emily, do you know how many bottles of portable oxygen for use by the cabin crew were aboard MH370? If some all crew were in seats using the drop-down mask, it makes me think that the first officer could have been using portable oxygen for much longer than thought. For example, if each bottle is 45 minutes of oxygen and there were 10 available bottles, that would give 7.5 hours of air. This could mean that the captain was at the controls right until the very end to help prevent the first officer getting back into the cockpit. His mobile phone being the only one we know of to ping makes me think he may have been using portable oxygen. Just a thought, and thanks as always for the excellent video. Interesting.
It's a very good point, Emily. Um, the crew oxygen in the cockpit depends on how many flight crew are in the cockpit. If there's only one person in the cockpit, the oxygen will last for 27 hours. So we know the flight was 7 hours 37 minutes before fuel exhaustion. So plenty enough, and plenty enough even if two people were in the cockpit. In the cabin, there are 15 portable oxygen cylinders on MH370, and each one lasts a minimum of 15.5 minutes, but that is if you turn it up to full flow rate. If you set it, for example, at 50% flow rate, it'll last for 31 minutes. And if you have a couple of those available to you, which you're alluding to in is the suggestion with the pilot, you could have over an hour. So yes, it's a very interesting point. And what happened to the co-pilot is a very good question.
Yeah, indeed. So Jeff Daniel, 814, great episode as usual. Amazed at all the questions being asked and a fascinating improvement on the current system used for safety and tracking. In South Africa, vehicle theft is a huge problem, and it is equally intriguing to see the lengths the suppliers of tracking systems go to try and hide the locations of their tracking devices installed in vehicles. But as with all systems, there has to be a record somewhere of the location of these systems. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, that record, no matter how well it is protected, is still a weak point if the knowledge falls into the hands of those who want to use it for malicious intent. And then in the end, the power problem still exists. The battery life is limited. That may change if the nuclear powered battery idea takes off, but until then, the system designers have to try and stay one step ahead all the time.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I agree. I'm also amazed at all the questions being asked, and you raise some very good points.
Indeed. Um, So we go on to Jane Glue 6281. Hi guys, thank you for your authentic investigation. My question is a bit sensitive, but at what point would the passengers have known something was wrong? Wouldn't they have noticed the aircraft making that sharp left turn? Do you think the pressure on the aircraft might have been tampered with before the turn? It just seems odd to me that not one of the passengers used their mobiles. It is so sad, and my heart goes out to the families and loved ones of the passengers and crew. I just wondered at what point the passengers have had to use oxygen masks, etc. Love and blessings to them all.
Yeah, Jane, absolutely fascinating observation. And you ask specifically the question it, that whether the pressure system in the aircraft might have been tampered with before the diversion turn. And the answer to that is quite possibly yes. And we are actually currently investigating specifically that aspect. The settings we get from the engine health monitoring include also the flow rate of the pressurization system, and it was unusually high on the MH370 flight. So we're looking into that to see if we get any new clues from that study. Um, I don't know whether there has been a systematic check of all passengers' mobile phones. If there was a systematic check of all mobile phones and no passenger attempted to make any mobile call, then, as you point out, it would support the theory that oxygen masks were used, but they only last a certain time, max 20 minutes, and then um, people will suffer from hypoxia and eventually will die. So you raise a very good set of questions there.
So Tom Brown, 1898, asks, it's my understanding that the electronics bay on Airbus planes is beneath the cockpit, not accessible to anyone as it was on MH370. Well, that's not right, but Richard, you can explain why.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Tom. On MH370, the access is in the forward galley area to the electronics bay underneath the cockpit. On narrow body jets like the Boeing 737, the access is usually via a cockpit floor hatch. On some wide bodies, like the Airbus A380, there are multiple bays, one under the cockpit, another in the forward cargo area, which is also accessible, and even accessible via an exterior hatch to the service bay. On the new design Airbus A350 or the Boeing 787, they concentrate computing in centralized racks, sometimes located aft of the cockpit or distributed in different areas rather than simply under the floor, as in the Boeing 777. So you have to know which aircraft, and it's not just simply Airbus or Boeing. There are different options on different aircraft from both manufacturers.
So Anthony Fraser, hyphen Quebec Yankee 3 Romeo Kilo. The question is, has there ever been a diagram made of MH370, i.e. the 777, showing the debris that has been found and to what part of the plane it came from? It may give an insight as to how the plane came down. Thank you, guys. Great respect to you both.
Yes, this diagram has been produced by a number of different people. We're showing a screenshot of one of them, a screenshot of the MH370 aircraft with the location on that aircraft, and you will see there were debris items from all over, from nose to tail, from the wings, the engine, the fuselage, and also from the interior of the cabin, not just the exterior items. So you can draw your own conclusion, Anthony, from that diagram.
Okay, from Sushi Ginger 444, do Jet2, EasyJet, Ryanair have a lot of transoceanic flights? I wouldn't have thought so. So I'm going to answer this one. Yes, well, all the airlines of Europe, they do cross not the North Atlantic or the Pacific. These are the low cost and short haul airlines, but they do cross the North Sea to Norway. They do cross the Baltic to Finland and Scandinavia. They do cross the Mediterranean to North Africa, and they do, in fact, fly in the North Atlantic down to the Canary Islands and the like off the African coast. So, as Europeans, particularly in winter, seek the sun, lots and lots of aircraft do cross large bodies of water. Not like the Indian Ocean, but certainly they are over water for sure. So that answers that question. Um, Timbo 7772, here's a question for you that needs to be delved into. The accident scenario of rupturing crew oxygen bottles in the left side of the avionics bay. Please, can you look into this and explain why you have discounted it? It explains the loss of the transponder, autopilot, auto throttle, comms, and disruption of power to SATCOM. It could then result in a hypoxic ghost flight after the crew became incapacitated. Richard, you've got a very good answer to that one.
Yeah. Well, we have discussed this many times, Timbo 7772. It's also been discussed in relation to a possible oxygen fire from the when you release oxygen into the atmosphere, any little spark will cause a fire. Um, the fact is, we know about the loss of the transponder. We know that it was switched off in the cockpit. We know that because there are different positions of the switch, and the first position towards the standby position is just to prevent the altitude being sent by the transponder. And there was a brief moment where we had no altitude signal, and then it was no signal at all when it was switched to standby. So we've explained the transponder already. And in terms of oxygen bottles being ruptured, uh, if there was a fire, then every accident we've known in the history of aviation, the maximum time you have to get a plane on the ground in the event of a fire is about 20 minutes. But we know for a fact that the total flying time of MH370 was 7 hours and 37 minutes. So we conclude from that there wasn't an oxygen fire. So, Timbo, I'm not sure um, why you want to persist with this scenario, but we have discounted it for the reasons that have given.
And viewers, that's all we have time for today. And I'd like to thank you very much indeed for tuning in. And all the questions are absolutely fantastic. We're taking a break tomorrow, but we're back on Saturday with more questions. And on Sunday, we're launching our plane guys. And we're going to be looking at the tragic Silk Air crash and examining that in detail and giving you all the ins and outs of that tragedy. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for all your work on these questions. It's been fascinating and certainly some new clues about MH370. And viewers will please tune in on Saturday. Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.